Hi, I'm Tiffany Craig of Continuum Counseling Services in Columbia, Maryland, and this is your Mental Health Minute. I wanted to take a brief aside from our conversation about managing the holidays. I will come back to that. But I've been asked to explain a little bit about the ADHD brain, how it works, and why I think it's absolutely incredible, and I do. So essentially, we're talking about the frontal lobes of the brain. And forgive me, because I am going to oversimplify just a bit, but it definitely makes the point. So the frontal lobes of the brain is the area that's responsible for problem solving, error correction, consequential thinking. All that kind of good stuff happens in the front part of the brain. Now, we have sort of a net of neurons in front of that part of the brain, which is what we refer to as the executive function net. Now, everybody at puberty, all of those connections snap off. So it's sort of, you look at a middle schooler's brain, it looks sort of like a rose bush that's been cut back to sticks. So if you look at a middle schooler and think, has she lost her mind? She actually has. The good news is it does grow back. Yay! So for a non-ADHD brain, those connections to the frontal lobes, the executive function net, tends to grow back by about 22, 23 years old. It tends to be pretty much done by then. The ADHD brain is much more complicated. There's a lot more going on in there all the time. So it takes the ADHD brain till usually 25, 26, 27 or so for all of those neurons to grow back and create an at least somewhat functional executive function net. Okay, so the way this executive function net works, if you think about it, people without ADHD tend to think on maybe 4 tracks at a time. They're maybe paying attention to 2. Sorry guys, but it's kind of a boring brain. So if you have ADHD, you tend to think on at least 20 to 100 tracks at a time. Okay, so for the non-ADHD brain, thinking on just those 4 tracks or so, stray thoughts like, oh, your keys are over there, or you need to leave in 5 minutes, or there's a test, so you need to plan this out this way, this way, this way, this way. Those things tend to get caught in the net. The net also helps the non-ADHD person to filter out inconsequential data. So where someone, say in a classroom setting, is the easiest place to sort of spot it. In a classroom setting, someone without ADHD can filter out that person over there is making that sound, or the fact that I'm hungry, or that thing that's going on over there outside the window. All those things sort of get caught in that net, and the net says, you know what, don't pay attention to that, pay attention to this over here. And they can pretty much do it. Now, with ADHD, whether you're inattentive or hyperactive, either one, or combined, which most people are combined, that filtering is not happening. So all of those 20 to 100 tracks, everything that's on them, everything that's coming at them sensorially, all at the same time, all feels equally important. So attention deficit is really a misnomer. It's not a lack of attention. It's attention to way too many things without an internal automatic system that prioritizes what to pay attention to and what to ignore. So it's very difficult for a person with ADHD to focus. At times, though, it's very confusing because the person with ADHD will focus fiercely. They can hyperfocus because it just gets to be too much. So I'm going to drown everything out and just pay attention to this one thing. So that can be working until midnight and you realize, I was supposed to be home 3 hours ago. Or getting stuck in a video game, and before you know it, you've been 4 hours into it, you're still playing the same video game because you're hyper-focused on it. That also can be a symptom of ADHD. So again, so what's going on inside that brain? The boring brain people who are only thinking on 4 tracks at a time, the stray thoughts are getting caught in the net, except for the adolescents because it hasn't all grown back yet, so sometimes stuff kind of misses. And also if someone is dealing with depression or sleep deprivation, either one can also really challenge that executive function net, give it some holes so things don't necessarily catch the way they're supposed to. But for the brilliant ADHD brain, you're thinking on 20 to 100 tracks at a time, the net is stretched thin and now it has holes in it. So sometimes stuff gets caught and sometimes it doesn't, and it's very random. So it can make the people around the person with ADHD think, well, she's just being a jerk. Well, no, she's not. She actually it fell through the net this time. Sometimes it gets caught and sometimes it doesn't. And it can be very confusing for people who are outside of the ADHD person's mind to understand kind of what's going on, that it wasn't intentional, that it isn't defiance, that it isn't neglect. It just did not get caught in the net. Okay, so the downside of this ADHD brilliant brain is that stuff not getting caught in the net makes things like organization difficult, makes things like procrastination a serious challenge at times. Sometimes you'll have very uneven performance or very uneven effort based on how interested the person is in the thing that they're engaging in. And that's pretty normal par for the course for that very, very busy ADHD brain, because we can only manage but so much at a time. So that's the downside. The upside, though, is you realize this isn't just out of the box thinking. This is there is no box thinking. This is a brilliant mind. This is the kind of mind that comes up with things the way Walt Disney did, the way Steve Jobs did. A lot of our most brilliant entrepreneurs and innovators have been people with ADHD for this reason. It is a limitless mind. So by the time the non-ADHD person is saying, you can't do that, the person with ADHD has come up with 20 different ways to do it and moved on to something else entirely because now it's boring. So this really is an extraordinary mind. The challenge, though, is to create an external executive function net where the internal net is not happening on its own. And we find that most people have the most success when they work with both the outside and the inside at the same time. So working the outside is that executive function net. So this is what people called executive function coaches do. I'm not one, but I know several. So let me know if you want one. I can certainly make a referral. The executive function coach will come up with a specific way to do things, specific compensatory skills that are based on your strengths, the person with ADHD, and to compensate for the areas that are not as strong. And the areas of executive function are things like goal-directed persistence, metacognition, which is doing a million things at once, things like response inhibition, emotional control, task initiation, sustained attention, working memory, planning, prioritization, flexibility, organization. All of those things can be areas that are challenged, executive function areas that are challenged for the person with that very busy, very brilliant ADHD mind. So the executive function coach comes up with a very unique way to approach whatever the task is, whether it's school or work or home life challenges, whatever they may be, to do it in a way that is specifically tailored for that person with ADHD strengths to help compensate for the areas that are not as strong. So that's working the outside. Now working the inside is working the physiology. And with ADHD, there's 4 primary areas of physiology that are helpful to look at. The one that people go to pretty obviously and quickly is medication. Medication is very, very helpful for some people and very unhelpful for others. So it's a very unique, your mileage may vary kind of situation. And with the medications, there's 2 different kinds. There's stimulants that busy up a bunch of these tracks so you can focus here. And there's non-stimulants like Wellbutrin, some other things that are used that cut down on impulsivity and get the whole brain regulating a little bit better. Other things physiologically that get that brain regulating better are things like there are very specific areas of nutrition that can be very helpful to support ADHD brain health uniquely. And also physically, exercise will always be important for the person with ADHD, because exercise also helps regulate the brain and getting things clicking kind of along all together in a much more effective way. It also gives the brain a break, which is sort of the 4th area of physiology that I like to encourage people to work on. Anything that gives your brain a break, because it is a very, very busy brain. Fatigue is often an issue for people with ADHD. It's like they have 2 speeds. They have 90 miles a minute and they have a sleep, not a lot in between. And that's sort of normal because it takes that much to keep that brain going and going and going all day, and then it's exhausting. So they tend to need some rest. So the other thing that also helps in giving brain breaks is anything that sort of puts you in what I would call a state of Zen, whatever your religious or faith background may be. Something that can sort of put you on dial tone, so you don't have to focus on everything that's going on. You don't have to manage everything that's going on. You can block it out. And that's different things for different people. Some people can accomplish that with prayer. Some people can accomplish it with things like singing bowls. Singing bowl is one of these because it engages the senses. Sometimes people with ADHD can sort of get lost in that sound, and getting lost in that sound is giving the brain a break. Walking a labyrinth can be something like that. Exercise can be something like that. Hiking in the woods, for some people, is that kind of brain break. Music, dance, art, anything that gives the brain a break is very, very helpful for the ADHD mind. So to summarize, in talking about ADHD, we're talking about the differences between the ADHD mind and the non-ADHD mind. The ADHD mind is very, very busy all the time, and because of that, and because there's not that natural filtering for what to pay attention to and what not to pay attention to, compensatory skills will be imperative so that nothing gets in the way of the success of the person with ADHD. And sometimes the interventions can be external and sometimes it can be internal. So think about your unique situation. If you're not sure whether or not you have ADHD, you might want to look. There's a myriad of resources online to help you sort of get an idea. The ADHD mind is a brain with endless, limitless potential that with proper compensatory skills can create amazing innovation in our world. And so I encourage anyone with ADHD to seek out care and ways that you can develop compensatory skills so that nothing gets in the way of your success. All right, this has been your Mental Health Minute. It's been good to be with you. I hope to talk to you again soon.
Let's face it, sometimes life is just hard. The good news is you don't have to go through it alone. We all hit different bumps and challenges along the way, and I'm here to help you. So go to my website, www.mypeace.co. That's www.mypeace.co, not com, co. I do mean that. And click on the Contact Tiffany button. Let's talk. You can send me an email, you can text me, you can call me, either way. But let's figure out how we can get you moving from surviving to thriving. As the great Maya Angelou once wrote, surviving is important, but thriving is elegant. So let's thrive. I'll talk to you soon.